All right, folks, where we are heading now to wrap us up for the day and for the zero-day conference is AI. We heard a little bit about Watson earlier on. We're going to get into some broader detail about AI and AI as cybersecurity. The panel for the discussion is Anthony O'Callaghan from Johnson's Controls, Mary O'Brien from IBM, Ronan Murphy, Smarttech, and Mark Brosnan from Xanadu. If you give them a warm round of applause, please, folks. Hang on a minute. Where's Mary? All the way down the back, and here we are depending on you. Mary was obviously just getting microphoned up. Okay, what we will do is, as Mary joins us, you're very welcome. We talked about Mary's product earlier on in the form of Watson, but maybe we might step back a bit and take a bit of a broader look at AI in cybersecurity terms. Ronan, maybe you'd have that land in your lap. AI is the future of cybersecurity?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. If I just go back a moment and I look at my business, which is a security operations center, I looked at the business and I looked at the challenges we were dealing with on a daily basis, and it's thousands and thousands of issues and log analysis and vulnerability management and ransomware and phishing emails. And I said, you know what, this is a great business. But as we became more successful and we started winning more customers, I said, oh my God, we've made a critical mistake here. We cannot scale, we cannot get the skills, we cannot get the people, we cannot deal with the volume of threats that we're seeing. I heard IBM talking about Watson and talking about how it was helping to transform the healthcare industry and how they were then going to look at training it for cybersecurity. So Dennis touched on this earlier. He made it sound very nice, but I actually tormented him for about 2 weeks before he would let us go on the program. But when we did get on the program, we could see very clearly, it was like a light bulb moment, that this was a game changer in terms of empowering our analysts to drill down, to understand, and to deal with this more very sophisticated threat. So from a cybersecurity perspective, I would go so far as to say that without utilizing or leveraging artificial intelligence, or IBM's way of saying it is cognitive, that you are going to constantly be chasing the needle in the haystack approach.
And does it empower analysts or does it replace them?
So, I'll be honest, I was delighted. I thought I could cut my salary bill in half, and I thought it was the best thing ever, and I think my analysts were a little bit worried when we decided we were going to use it. But it certainly doesn't replace them. It empowers them to be better, to go up the value chain. It empowers us to win more business. And ultimately, it makes them better at their job. It definitely does not replace them, it complements them.
Mark, would you have a view?
Yeah, so in Xanadu we build software for the online gambling industry. It's an industry which is growing very quickly. And we are looking to use artificial intelligence and predictive analysis across the business, not only in security, but in terms of customer analysis and increasing the value of the experience for the customer. But where it's really useful to us is allowing our security team to do far more and to do it far quicker. So to give you an example of the types of challenges we would face building software for one of our main clients, which is Matchbook.com. Next week, they'll process on Tuesday about 400 million API transactions. And they will have a marketing team that will be pushing a product and will be pushing a lot of people to the website. And our security team will have a very big challenge on their hands to identify the difference between a really good marketing campaign and a really active betting exchange or a brute force attack on our login. And predefining any particular rules is really, really difficult. And using predictive analysis to give you an indication as to what might be happening, or giving an indicator to our security team to be able to say, actually, this is more likely natural traffic versus unnatural traffic, will allow the team in Matchbook to make far more valuable decisions. The cost of us turning off traffic or going into defensive mode in a scenario where people are expecting less than 40 millisecond response times on their trades, or where you have an open offer book and you have a lot of exposure on a short order where a race is closing in 10 or 15 minutes. If we turn off the tap, or if we have to shut down the website because of a misdiagnosed security threat, that's very, very expensive, both to the brand and to the business itself. So what we're working on throughout our development cycle, when we're putting in predictive analysis into our product, is we're building in we're building in predictive analysis around what we would consider normal usage and non-normal usage, and what we're looking at over the next, and it's going to be a long project, over the next 5 to 6 years, is building in that level of artificial intelligence. We're not at an artificial intelligence layer yet. We're at a predictive analytics layer at which we hope to get to artificial intelligence and then eventually deep learning. But it's definitely the direction we're taking with our product development team.
And is that the kind of thing that's exclusive to organizations of significant revenue? Do you need to be able to invest big capital in something like that?
For us, it probably starts with a culture. So the majority of our staff are software engineers or QA analysts or whatever it happens to be. And getting in this concept of understanding the cause and effect of what you're building from a business perspective in terms of revenue, but the cause and effect of different products you're putting out there and how they interact. And just slowly introducing this concept that there's understanding the type of traffic that's going to be generated from the products you're building. I think it starts with the culture, and you can start building it in. The key or the core thing I would say to anybody involved in building that type of product or involved in building any technical product is keep and capture as much data as possible. You mightn't be able to process it, but come back and capture it, because the time will come later where you'll actually be able to run loads of analytics against it.
Johnson's Controls, is it something that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, let's say what we're using AI for within Johnson Controls is we have, let's say millions of devices in the field generating, billions of signals on a daily basis, right? And I suppose one of the things that we're looking for, so that's what we have in the field, but also internally within our, our IT landscape. One of the key things for us is separating the noise from the real events as well. And I think that's the key for AI for us from a security perspective. Now I can promise IBM or Smarttech haven't paid me to say this, right? But when I look at what the guys have done, right, in terms of, let's say leveraging Watson, let's say that deep machine learning, let's say, platform with the knowledge that the analysts have, right, to be able to identify what's real and what's not. I think that's very, very intelligent, right? And let's say that's very much what we're doing internally. It's not about, to your earlier point, it's not about replacing analysts, right? It's about empowering them. So rather than, let's say, in one of Ronan's cases that he kind of took me through earlier, right, in terms of the, the analyst, let's say, getting the results of an event within 5 minutes, rather than spending hours, let's say, analysing that event. That's freeing them up as well, right? Let's say to work on, I suppose, higher profile items as well, right?
Well, on that, one of the things, Mary, that when we're talking about Watson, one of the things we were told earlier on was that the express aim in respect of Watson is to consolidate an industry that has 1,500 players in it down to, I assume, solely Watson, but at least a much smaller industry. Is there a risk in that? Is there a risk that if Watson becomes the main player, if that industry consolidates, that is easier to combat than it is 1,500 players?
Well, actually, that's not the purpose of Watson, really. So, when Dennis showed that IBM security ecosystem, he was talking about consolidating the 15,000 players into a manageable problem that needed to be solved with almost like segmenting the problem into understandable pieces so that you could really understand where you needed to solution. And he was, I guess, pontificating that if you had an open ecosystem where you could plug in some IBM, some of other people's, we wouldn't ever expect anybody to have all of IBM anywhere. Yeah. Well, actually, maybe we would. But, if you could plug and play there, you would end up with the best solution potentially. The whole idea behind Watson, however, was to solution a number of things. The first and most pressing problem is the shortage of security analysts out there. There's a huge shortage, and I think Dennis suggested, he's got all the stats, somewhere in the region of 1 million security positions unfilled this year.
1 million? Globally.
Worldwide.
Wow.
So, huge shortage of analysts, and also there's an explosion of threats, of course, and of security incidents. So we're looking to improve the productivity of the analysts that exist, both because there's a shortage of them and also because he had the stats to tell you that the average analyst would be able to look at about 20 incidents a day, and it took them so long to do it. So we're trying to look at a means of bringing more, better data to their fingertips to make them faster, more efficient, to bridge the gap, and also allow them to investigate some of the items that were falling below the water level in that iceberg he showed, as opposed to just the tip above the water.
What about AI on the threat side? Is it something that you are worried about, that there is somewhere somebody is creating a cognitive system designed to attack you just as much as there is people to defend you? Ronan?
Personally, for me at the moment, it's not a concern. I drove down here last night. I had Tom Kellerman in the passenger seat. And by the time he got here, he was convincing me that AI was going to gobble us all up. But I said, Tom, don't speak about that at the conference. That's a couple of years away yet. So,
did you sleep at all, out of curiosity?
I'm not
just
sure.
lie awake
I'm not
shaking?
sure. We'll find that out later. But in terms of at the moment, I don't see that as a problem. It's a tool that's searching the wild. It's not sitting in line. It's not affecting systems. It's basically crunching large quantities of data very, very quickly, and it's getting to the crux of the problem. Like, if you look at one of the KPIs I have in terms of my business with my analysts, it's how many blogs they read, how much data, how much research they're doing in terms of what's happening. And they're sick of me banging on about, did you read the blogs? Did you read the white papers? Have you studied what's happening? Do we know what the latest version of ransomware is? And they do that because they enjoy it, but we want more and more and more. So Watson allows them to do that at a relative pace, but at the same time empowering them with that additional knowledge and the linkages, and then painting a graphical illustration of what's happening in real time. Because, and just one point that's very important, is that when a breach happens, the very first thing that any of the CISOs here will ask of a security vendor like us, what else is going to happen? Was this a smokescreen? Are they attacking us somewhere else? It's what Martin Leahy spoke about earlier. And that what Watson does is it gives us that information at our fingertips, where we can, with a very high degree of accuracy and confidence, go back to the board of directors. And a lot of time when we're called in, it is to the board. They're all on the phone. And it's giving us that level of confidence where we can tell them we've crunched the data, we've come back with a relatively accurate answer.
Anthony, maybe you might have a view on this. How well does AI or cognitive systems learn and adapt to those kind of sources? Because at least an analyst knows which blog to go to and sees the way the trends are going. Does AI do that effectively?
Yeah, let's say I think for us, kind of, as we started with the platform, that was a major concern of ours. Let's say how good is it at learning, let's say, based on the human doing the event as well, right? So there is that honeymoon period as well for us, right? Let's say while you're letting the system take, or let's say provide analysis, you're gauging that against what a human would do, right? I think what's very important, and it was a big lesson learned for us, was the feedback loop as well. So while the AI system is producing results, that you allow for that human feedback as well, so that you're not just saying that this was the wrong answer, you're also giving it the reason why it's wrong. And I think so one of the use cases for us is as we push into end consumer facing AI applications, so your standard chatbots, etc., that are in the field, it's very important that AI is prepared to answer any particular question, right? So while it gets to the end of the road and it can't answer a question, that there's somebody there to say, this is why you couldn't answer and here's the correct answer. So I think that feedback loop is incredibly important as well for AI to learn, right? It's not truly machine learning just on its own.
Is it too far of an extrapolation to say that, I mean, I'm inferring into what you're saying, but for those who haven't deployed AI, do you believe them to be running an unacceptable risk, or can traditional methods still do the job? Mark?
I think it comes down to efficiency. So with us, traditional methods will still do the job in terms of protecting against any risk, but your ability to mitigate against that risk or come up with a solution for that risk is diminished. So if you can't get to the answer quickly enough, you can't come to the solution quickly enough. And what AI allows you to do is allows you to get there quicker. So I don't think you are necessarily, if you're taking the proper defensive actions, I don't think you're necessarily causing an extra risk, but you're definitely not as efficient as you could be. And that's what artificial intelligence is bringing, is actually making your analysts get to the answer that much quicker.
And in your experience, is it cost effective at that?
So far it is. It's very early in terms of how and where we're adapting it, but it's definitely making it more effective, and it's making our analysts a lot more comfortable with the decisions they're making in terms of mitigating those risks.
Okay, let's throw it open to the floor. Anybody want to ask a question or two? Or one or two people want to ask a question, if we can still deploy good grammar this late into the day. Anybody got anything that they would like to raise with any of the panel? Oh, we can't go on no questions, folks. You can't have that be the end of the day. Anybody at all? I'll wait you out. Thank you very much. One down the back. Appreciate it greatly. All right. Two down the back, actually.
Can I ask the panel, and perhaps starting with Rowan, to talk more about how they see artificial intelligence complementing the human as opposed to replacing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our game, it's all about time. So if you went to one of our lead engineers, he's a typical engineer, he's very pragmatic, he isn't overly impressed with Watson as a tool. He'll say, yeah, it's fine, but we could do what Watson does. So then I would challenge him and I would say, okay, but how long would it take us to give what it just gave us? And he said, 3 weeks. And you're like, well, that's kind of, yeah, he said, yeah, it's really fast. It'll give us that breakdown and that analysis in 5 minutes. But in cybersecurity, it's all about speed. It's about accuracy and it's about speed. And our ability to go back to our customers with a clear diagnosis of what's happening is just so important. And one of the questions that Anton asked to Mark was, is it commercially viable? It's not overly expensive as a technology to implement in an organization, but I think the cost implication has to be weighed up against the potential damage and how much you value your data or the potential loss of your data. An awful lot of, one of the interesting comments that Tom or Hank made to me yesterday evening was that the marketing department in organizations should now allocate some of their budget to cybersecurity. Because if you have a breach, the brand is damaged and impacted on, so that should be part of their budget. So I think that's how you value it. But it's about speed, it's about accuracy, and they're the key things, the key enablers of the product from my perspective.
Anybody else want to come in there?
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I'd add is definitely one thing that we see internally is the fear factor as well that AI brings, right? So, we're using AI a lot in business process re-engineering, so taking as is and automating a large chunk of it, right? And our aim is not job reduction, right? It's, let's say, freeing up these commoditized tasks, these non-value add tasks that they can go and work on higher functions. But it's something that every organization has to deal with, right? It's that initial fear factor that, oh, is my job gone, right? And it's something that we had to handle at the very start as well, right?
Okay, we had one further question down here. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the panel, much of the discussion is about using AI to defend against hackers. And I think we kind of all understand that. But kind of one of our other major threats that's going to cost us real money is the data protection authorities. Can AI help us kind of deliver, I guess, good reporting mechanisms or whatever needs to be done to defend against that?
Mary, do you want to take that one?
Can AI help us?
In terms of quality of reporting in the governance space.
I'm sure it can. I mean, what is Watson doing but accelerating the crunching of data? And when it comes to creating reports and so on, I mean, I'm not sure that we would need Watson or AI to do that, but you certainly, just need to understand exactly what data you're looking for, how you want to classify it, what kind of reports you're looking for. And any computer is going to, accelerate that as long as it's tailored.
Ron?
I think that's a brilliant question, and I think that AI is going to be fundamentally important going forward in terms of data classification, in terms of retrospectively looking at large quantities of data that sit within your network and injecting metadata into that data to classify it, but also taking out the human being out of the supply chain and classification of data moving forward. So that's really going to become a massive area of growth for AI. Companies like StealthBits work in that arena, and you are going to see a huge growth in that area because data is the new oil, as RDJ touched on earlier. It's a huge challenge. GDPR is a huge challenge, and you're going to have to leverage AI and machine learning and deep learning, and not only just for say optical character recognition and classification, but for I was at a deep learning conference recently in London with Mark, and Google were going into image recognition and voice recognition for deep learning and data classifications on things like CCTV cameras. So that's going to be a massive growth area, and you'll see technologies like Watson applied to that area.
And does that relate, Mark, slightly to what you were saying about the thing of retention of data for subsequent analysis?
Yeah, I think just to answer the question, I think there's a larger question around businesses within a particular industry sharing information. For us, security comes in a lot of different forms. There's obviously security of the data, and there's security of the user experience and so on. But we've security and integrity of the industry we work in. And in the gambling industry, you have to worry about things like match fixing, responsible gambling, anti-money laundering. And I think there's a big argument to be made for coming up with sharing normalized type data and allowing artificial intelligence find patterns in those particular data sets across an entire industry to indicate where there's particular problems. And that's, it can help with increasing the value or how the industry itself is perceived or regulated if we can get to a point where companies are comfortable sharing some types of data that can give a better picture of what's happening within the industry.
What I might do, folks, as we draw to a close at this point is I'm going to thank the panel, but I'm actually going to ask them to stay here because it shouldn't fall on me to formally close the first 0-day conference. I think that should fall on Ronan. So I'll get him to do the formal closing while we all sit around like cheerleaders here on either side of him. In advance of his formal close, big thank you to the panel of speakers that we have just had, and Ronan will close us out.